The following program contains scenes and language of a frank and explicit nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to Filmjitsu, the podcast that wields films like deadly weapons. We are your hosts. I am Mike.
And I am Jay.
This week we have something extra special for our listeners that we're excited to share. It's bonus feature time here on Filmjitsu. That second disc in your Filmjitsu DVD case that you never look at. We're excited though because it's got more than just 20 extra minutes of Bilbo's birthday party. We are excited because this week we have writer-director Dane Elcar, who was kind enough to come on the show and chat with us about his feature film debut, Brightwood. Dane, welcome to Filmjitsu.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
I had the pleasure to see Dane's feature film, Brightwood, at the Salem Horror Fest in April. I absolutely loved it. I was crazy about the movie. I haven't really stopped talking about it since. Salem Horror Fest has some of the most interesting, provocative, important programming going on in the festival circuit as far as I'm concerned. Brightwood was a definite favorite of mine at the 2023 Salem Horror Fest. So thanks to Dane for coming on the show. I think it's important to say right from the get-go that Brightwood is a film with a lot of twists along the way. And I think this conversation will probably contain some spoilers as we go. So I'd like to consider our listeners warned and just kind of open us up to chatting about the movie.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So Dane, I guess before we discuss the film itself, I want to know a little bit more about your background as a filmmaker, in the industry. You have producing credits going back to 2012.
Oh, do I?
Yeah, you do. You do. You have lots of experience in sound and video editing. So kind of give us that breaking in story. What got you into the world of filmmaking in the first place?
My father was an actor, and so I kind of grew up around that whole world. He had a theater in Santa Paula that so I literally kind of grew up in professional theater, running around the pews and playing with the props and getting in trouble. And I've always wanted to kind of, or I've always been writing. I've always been trying to make films. The people that I would gravitate towards were all filmmakers and actors, and it took a while though to get serious about it. So I have worked on a number of short films. I've been writing for a very long time. I do sound work as well as editing. I edit a lot.
Yeah, man, there's no question that you edit a lot.
Yeah.
watching both The Pond and Brightwood, one of the things that jumped out at me was just how tight the editing was. And it's amazing too to hear that you do the sound, because one of the things that I like the most about both of them was the sound design and the usage of sound, and how important sound mattered to you. So it's so important from when you see a film that's smaller in budget, and I assume that this is a smaller budgeted.
Oh yeah, we had nothing.
Right, no resources, that kind of thing. I mean, I saw that like this film is basically by you in many respects, right? Like you wore so many different hats on this, and kudos to you for it, because from a technical standpoint, especially when you look at the editing and especially when you listen, it's solid. Really well made stuff. And that's sort of my background as well.
Oh, really?
Is this no budget, no resources, go out, wear 30 hats, do it all yourself, and then put it out there. And so to see someone doing that still to this day, and I think there's plenty of people now that are doing it on really low budget equipment and stuff. It seemed like you probably had something decent that you were shooting on though for the feature.
We had a nice Sony. It was a DSLR Sony. It wasn't anything too special, but I think it was what was important to me was that it was something that I was really comfortable and I knew how to use it, and that it was light, because I knew we were going to be running around the entire time. So I didn't want to have a huge camera. How did you keep
it so stabilized?
I got a Steadicam. I got a cheap Steadicam.
No way.
My neighbors must have thought I was crazy, because I would go out and jog with my practice around the neighborhood, test all the time. I mean, I had never used one really, so I was teaching myself how to do it.
Now, you didn't shoot pond, which is, I guess, just to set it up for the listeners, the pond was the initial take on this story, black and white, short film about what, 16 minutes,
so
something like
exactly
that.
So back in 2017 was when I started getting this idea of the kind of the idea that you can use a single location like this pond that I knew of. I was very familiar with with the space, and have this kind of time warp where he's going around and he can't get out and blah blah blah. And I played the part, which apparently you watched, and
well, you're good. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean,
you are good.
You were quite good in that, and it was a surprise to me when I watched, because I watched The Pond first, and then I watched.
You watched it
Brightwood.
first. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I wanted to see that progression, because you made the leap that I never did. I shot a feature for another director, but I never made my own feature. Just watching how you progressed over a few years.
Well, it was a kind of a journey, because so that idea I made The Pond, and I always knew that I wanted it to be a couple. I knew that if I was going to make a feature, it was going to be a couple, because I wanted to I just thought it would be fascinating to kind of take these two characters and just throw them into that situation. But that's all I knew. I didn't have any other thoughts about it. If there was going to be a feature at some point, that's what I would want to do.
Yeah.
So my producing partner and I, Max Wartendijk, who's the lead in the film, we had been working for years on another film, on another project that was going to have more of a budget. It was a bigger film, and we were talking to people, and then the pandemic hit, and we were still hoping that we could try to figure something out, but it ended up just falling through, and we weren't able to raise any financing. And so this is that big leap, which is, we were in the pandemic, and I kind of just said to myself, I'm going to make this movie. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And Brightwood I started seeing images of the couple, and I just set out and I wrote it. I wrote it really fast. It was a really cathartic thing, at least the first draft of it. But the writing of it, the location, how I was going to film it, all of those were factors in that I knew that I could do it. I knew that I could do it with like a few people.
Right.
And that was important, because if I had written too much, or written out of a budget that I didn't have, then I was trapping myself. So it was really about making something that I knew that I could do, and then that allowed me to kind of do it and get the people together.
Yeah, that's how it works. Sometimes, especially during the pandemic, it's funny that you mentioned that, because people were getting out, going to familiar places, doing single location short films and single location features. Many set in the woods. I think you sort of alluded to it a little bit when you said you wrote it very quickly, and then you mentioned it was cathartic. And
I had fun.
It feels personal.
I think you know what? I think that it was the time of being trapped. I mean, we were my wife and I mean, we obviously don't want to kill each other, but we were we were inside. Everyone was kind of inside. There was the element that you were trapped inside, and the world just seemed, the idea of going around in circles. Just kind of having that kind of every day seemed kind of like the same thing that we were doing, and so when I wrote it, what was great about it, and I think one of the reasons it made it cathartic, is that any situation when they were arguing, or when they were going through what they were doing at the beginning of the film, it was like I could turn it up to 11 and kind of have such an interesting time exploring this relationship and this fight and what they were doing.
I think there are a lot of different ways and a lot of different directions this could go in, and I just want to say we've been together a really long time.
Stupid amount of time.
Right.
I'm gonna do the hill.
No, can we please not do the hill?
Go home then. No one asked you to come.
Shit.
And I really overwrote the hell out of it, so that I could go back and then start really distilling it. And I did a lot of that with Dana Berger and Max Wartendijk. I brought them in pretty early on in the process.
I wanted to ask about that, because I think Brightwood is a small film with some big ideas. And it's interesting to hear you say, the pond was this idea that you had, and then it seemed as though you sort of layered all of these concepts on top of it in reaction to the pandemic. And so
somewhat, yeah. I mean, definitely I think it's one of those things. It's one of those strange things that I don't know if I was thinking about all of that stuff while I was doing
Right,
it.
right.
But they're there. They're clearly
Yeah,
there.
and so that got me thinking about your cast, right? Big ideas for a small film, single location, a two-person cast. I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about how you connected with Dana Berger and Max Warendijk for the project, and what was it like for the three of you to be out there at Egbert Lake, running around shooting in the woods?
Yeah, so I've known Max for years. I was roommates with him, almost 20 years ago. So he and I have, for the past 7 or 8 years, really kind of gotten together and have a much more producing relationship where we're trying to actively get work done, and it's been great. So when I wrote this project, it was very easy to me. He was the first person I gave it to. He was the first person that read it. He after just some kind of like, is it possible, blah blah blah, meeting, he came on board, and Max was the one that suggested Dana Berger, and they had worked together in a play in New York a few years earlier. And then I spoke to Dana, and we had a great conversation. We talked for like an hour. I think she really got the ideas that we were going for. She's super funny, very very smart. And I knew I wanted that element in the script as well. I knew that we were going to be talking about some dark things and weird things, and I wanted that humor in there whenever I could get it in there.
To insert a little bit of that levity. She's hard.
Oh yeah.
You snore like a 500-pound man. You're practically an alcoholic, and I feel like I can smell you rotting from here. Your teeth rotting. I can smell it in little waves, and your toenails are fucking disgusting.
Well, you make me proud that I'm addicted to porn.
Me too.
There was a great moment where she says to Max's character Dan in the movie. So they're a couple, clearly estranged. He's a bit of a drinker. Yeah. She's pretty high test herself, and just fed up with him in general. And at one point, she says something like, "You're going to die alone." I hope you die alone. And it's so out of control, like vile. And he has this response, and I had to ask you about it. He goes, "Fair enough."
Yeah.
Now, fair enough is one of my favorite phrases in all of the English language. Mike will tell you about it.
Yeah,
I used to use copywritten music in my films way back in the day, and used to put it as, instead of fair use agreement, the fair enough agreement.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But fair enough to me means fuck off. Right.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That's just 100%. Like, that's you. If you're working in retail, somebody comes up, they say something that you don't want. You're just like, oh, fair enough.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And he shut that fair enough out. And I was like, was that? So maybe I should ask Max. Maybe it's not you, Dane. But but I'm curious
where he was coming from.
Did that fair enough come from you or him in that?
Oh, I think that was in the script. We worked. Oh, it's so funny. Like we worked on it. What we would do is we would get together, and 2 or 3 times a week. I think it started at 3 times, and then we'd go to 2 times a week. We would just read, and then I would hear them, and then we would talk about it. And then I'd go and I'd rewrite, and then I really wanted them to feel comfortable with the language. And I wanted them to, if they had questions about it, I wanted it to happen there. And what ended up happening is that was just such a great workshop, a kind of distillation of the material. I knew what I wanted them to talk about. I knew what was important, but just to get it down to like what needed to be said to really understand the scenes. So of course, some of the lines I'm sure they added in. I know they wanted to, but I do think that fair enough is mine.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I love about the film is how it walks across a lot of genres in its runtime. It's horror, it's sci-fi, it's comedy, it's romance, it's drama. And I think you balanced all of it really nicely. It doesn't feel like the scales ever too far one way or the other. I guess I'm interested in, what genre do you most closely identify the film as? Even if you had to kind of put your stamp on it and say, in interviews, I know you said you always wanted to make a horror movie about relationships.
Right.
Do you consider this a horror movie? What is Brightwood to you?
It's a really good, that's great. I'm so happy that you brought that up, because in reality, when I was conceiving it and writing it, I had these images of what you would say, like, this is like the Sam Raimi shot, or this is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then this is 2001, or this is something from Tarkovsky, or this is, and I really was trying to kind of find. Essentially, I was having fun. I was having fun with the films, the types of movies that I like. I was having fun with the different genres that I like. Yeah. I do think that I would call it a sci-fi horror film. I think we've been calling it a sci-fi horror film, and that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Not in that term.
Yeah, no, not in that term. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that I love movies, and I love genre movies, and I probably 3 years before would I think that I would be filming, because I do film stuff as well, like doing those fast zooms, and that was just me just being like, fuck it, I'm gonna do those zooms that you see in the horror movies that you like. So I had a lot of fun.
I guess I want to talk a little bit about the challenges of making a movie that is so not necessarily beholden to other genres, but audiences are really savvy when it comes to movies that have time loops. Things like Groundhog Day, Back to the Future, the Terminator movies, even Bill and Ted. Audiences know the language of movies that deal with time. And I guess I want to know, was that something you thought a lot about as you were writing it or making it? Is how do you play with those audience expectations and maybe use them to your advantage? Was that something you did on the page and in the visual language of the film?
I knew that what I wanted was to, whatever the time loop was or time warp, I was going to use it as a device, as a plot device, to essentially dissect this relationship and dissect cycles in a relationship, the toxic cycles that can happen in a relationship. I knew that the beginning of the film, they were going to break up, and by the end of the film, they were going to kind of be in love again, or they were going to, get the love that they deserve at the end of the film, in a way. Yeah. And so again, even though I do love time loop new movies, I focused really on that. I focused on just how I could use that within the relationship and what that might mean.
Yeah, it felt very secondary. It didn't feel like the center of the movie. The center of the movie was a mystery. Yeah, and I think that's why the way that you utilized time here was unique, because you really you buried it. In many respects, you have I love calling it echoes, right? They're sort of echoes, right?
Yeah, the sound echoes. Yeah, of course.
Right, exactly. And then, the echo of just regular existence that we're in, routine, everything else. This seemed very allegorical for all of that.
Yeah, and so, I think that I somewhere deep down, I'm not sure like I had all the themes in my head, but somewhere deep down, I felt like, or at least while we were editing it and things were coming together, it suddenly really started dawning on me that I was so happy that we didn't answer some of these things, even though some people they really want the answers for some, because ultimately I wanted it to be something that even if you don't realize it, when you walk away from it, you might feel like you have experienced something like that, even though you've clearly never been trapped in a time loop. It's just that idea in life is there. We are all trapped in time.
Exactly. That's exactly what I walked away. That's when I was watching it at the end of both films. I got the sense of we basically eat ourselves whole. But at the end of it, that we're responsible for our decisions, the circuitous nature of our lives. This is, and you can't break out of it necessarily, because of your behavior, because of who you are, etc. So that's why this movie works on such a profoundly deep level as well. It's really reassuring too, because I don't think that you could set to task on something like that and have it come off as authentic. I think if all those themes were in your head and you set to task on it, it's going to come off as just
honestly, when we were on set, I'll tell you, when we were on set, I knew that I instinctively, when I film, I'm going to make something darker. And I just was like, what are we going to do to make this funny and keep it flowing? And that was it. And that's why, Dana's very funny. Max is very funny. It was like a story about relationships, and it wouldn't really play that well. It'd be a little too much. So oftentimes it was like, okay, how are we going to make this kind of funny?
That sounds like a good shoot.
It was a good shoot. It was very hard. I had a hard time. I think my actors loved it. So they say they had the best time of their lives, and I was exhausted. So.
Yeah, you were calling every single shot. Again, it was like a crew of one basically on that thing. I mean, you had some sound people helping.
We had we had sound, and we had my very good assistant Andrew Clark, we really got, lens changes down to a science. We were so good. But every day I would equate it to kind of like a sporting event. You like get up. I would get up at 5. I'd go to set. I'd try to figure, where we were going with the day. And by the end of the shoot, my body was just done. And so I had to kind of recover for the next day because we were going to all just go do it again.
How many days did you do like consecutively?
I think we did 12 out of 16 days. We had some days off, but it was 12-day shoot. Yeah.
Not a lot for a feature. I mean, that's pretty good.
No, we were going, and it's a testament to my producer Max Wartendijk, who we overplanned this film. We spent months on the schedule. I mean, to the point where I just would like be rolling my eyes, like, do we really need to do this? But every shot, every lens change was so planned out that when we got to the shoot, he could act, and then I just had this like Bible that I could follow. And what we found after the first couple of days is we were ahead of schedule. And so it's a interesting example of this planning actually making it we had a better understanding of what we were doing. And so it actually allowed us, even though we didn't have that many days, it allowed us to slow down and actually play out some of these scenes more. So I would do more takes because I knew that we had the time to do it.
You could flex your inner Kubrick.
Oh yeah,
those 37 takes in.
Yeah, more like 8. But when you're on an indie film, you sit there and you go, okay, well, we're going to do 3-4 takes tops because this is the time we have. Yeah. And there's a luxury to getting 6 or 8 takes in on a scene
for sure.
So it was amazing to be able to do that.
Yeah. I imagine, especially shooting outdoors where you have so little control over all of your lighting conditions, right? I mean, you're working outside. So
lighting was annoying, but I knew that we really lucked out. It only rained once, so the lighting was okay.
You were under the canopy a lot, so it kind of left you with that diffusion.
Well, right, it was diffused. It also we shot about 2 years ago. We shot in May, and the leaves had grown, but they hadn't fully grown enough yet. So it left some of the light to come down.
Perfect.
If I had probably waited just a month more, because I went out and did B-roll, you had to use way more lights in those scenes in the forest. So that worked out really well. The thing that was hard to control was that there were people. It was an active park, and it was kind of far away. We shot in Rockaway, New Jersey. It was a great community. But, there were people walking their dogs. There was kids on ATVs. We weren't planning on that. I was running after a few kids trying to kill them.
It's like being when you're a kid playing kickball out in the street. Game on.
Game
off. You clear everything and then you wait and then game on, game off.
We eventually we started kind of befriending some of the kids, and they kind of helped out a little bit.
It's awesome.
But for a while there, it was really tough. But yeah, so like just simply they're supposed to be at this pond alone, and so we'd set up a shot, and suddenly there would be a fisherman across the way, and I would have to be like, oh no, what are we gonna let's go, I gotta go tell the guy to move, so.
Or write a fisherman into the story real
quick. throw a hoodie on him and then make him one of the characters.
Yeah, exactly. That and the bugs were horrible filming.
I'm going to TikTok and I'm looking for a viral clip of Dana Berger landing in that puddle of her own grue.
Oh, it's on there. If you haven't,
I knew it.
Of course it's on there. Are you yeah.
My goodness.
I love that shot. God, Dana was so great.
She is a sport, let me tell you, man.
Oh yeah.
I saw that.
Well, we only had one chance for that. And it was filled.
Right?
I'll tell you a story I bought a lot of fake blood, and we used a lot of fake blood on it, even though it's not that gory of a film. It's just you're doing takes and you end up using it. And I suddenly had a panic attack the night before we did that scene, and I was like, oh no, I don't think we have enough fake blood. So
more blood.
Yeah. So I had Max, I think he was out getting dinner. I call him and I'm like, you need to go and get as much corn syrup as you can, red food dye and green food color, And so he did, and we ended up making like 6 gallons of just fake blood. And then I threw in this like Hollywood goo. I don't know, I think they used it in Aliens. It's just like this goo, this wonderful goo.
It had an Evil Dead like vibe to it. Like it had that
stretchy and stringy. And then we were like, Dana, you're only gonna get to do this once. So she's like practicing, and it worked out really well. I filled it with as much nasty things as I could possibly find. And she dove right into it.
It didn't seem like she was too worried, but she played it well. She looked disgusted.
Well, I made those organs too, which is just they're just latex stuff.
Oh no, shit, really?
Yeah.
Latex, really?
Yeah, it was latex and cotton, and I would make all the spin the things. Yeah,
that's
my kid thought I was crazy, but also because I would have that laying around the house on the kitchen table. There's a bunch of organs right there.
Let this be a warning to the rest of you.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about horror films, one of the things when I was a kid that I got into horror films was makeup. And so my dad used to have, he used to have a makeup kit that I would play with all the time.
That's cool.
Theater guy. So latex, all of that stuff. I love that stuff. But I mean, the movie was obviously a lot of fun, but the making of the gore stuff was particularly fun for me.
It definitely has a slow burn, and then once you get to the blood, it starts flowing.
Yeah.
Much to the dismay of the locals of Rockaway, New Jersey, who are just trying to walk the dog.
Oh yeah.
There's a guy out in the woods screaming, "More blood!"
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you know what's funny? We planned some of those to be kind of like at a time we knew where there weren't going to be people running around. You know, because we were. Especially when Dana's like covered in blood running around.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm running after her with a camera, and she's I mean, who knows what people would have thought.
Didn't have any of the run-ins with the cops or anything like that.
No, luckily no. The city was they knew we were filming there, so they were really good about that. So
that's great.
But scaring some kid. Can you imagine going out with like, I'm going to take my son fishing today, and then Dana comes out of the woods screaming, covered in blood.
Especially the ratty hooded version of her, where she looks like she's been living in the woods for 10 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's fantastic.
You mentioned at the Q&A at Salem, which was great because it was you and your cast there. And I think maybe you weren't able to pin that down, but I was really curious if you have any sense of just how many miles you put around that pond. I wish
in retrospect, I wish we had like something that would have done it was miles. I mean, every day we were going around. Now we didn't film it in order. So it was only a few times that we were actively going around and around. In the movie, there's certain kind of markers. In the script, there were markers. So we had like the no swimming sign, we had the trash can, we had this kind of thing we called the gnarly tree, and then we had another trailway. So we would film all the no swimming sign stuff pretty much there, and then we'd move to the next trash can and kind of do that. But we were constantly moving. I mean, the whole movie is moving except for scene here and there.
I mean, most scenes your cast is either running into it or running out of it. So in those kind of things. This was just maybe my personal thing. One of the things that I don't know that you intended, but I took away from it was I kept envisioning this pond as this big circle they're running around, and I kept seeing it as the face of a clock. And the time running around this time over and over. There really weren't any visual cues in the movie for it, but I think the visual language of the movie and just how kinetic everything was, it kept me thinking about your characters as running in these circles of time in a way that I really drew me in, because like Jason said, so much of the movie is a mystery. We're trying to get to what is happening here. But what I loved about that play with time is that we knew so much about what was happening, but not why, not how. And the movie wasn't interested in giving us those answers, which I really think is a credit to the screenplay, because I think a lesser movie might have had those characters escape at the end, the big happy ending, that kind of thing. Time breaks and we all walk our way out. I guess I'm curious, did you ever have any other iterations of that story where it ended differently than it did.
No, never ended differently. No, I knew that's how. That image was one of the first images I ever had. Some of the first and second drafts, I think the mechanics of what was going on around the pond, I tried to fill in some of those cracks. I tried to add a little bit more of that why. But again, as we went on, it just seemed not as necessary, you know.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, like, oh, if I had a few more dollars, I could maybe do something, but I don't know what I would have really.
I don't know what it would add.
Yeah,
really.
That's what I mean. That's what I loved about it. It was, I think the sparseness of it really lent to the effectiveness. You know, it wasn't a time travel movie.
Right,
we were playing with some ideas of time, but I think for me, I loved that we didn't get the Phil Connors discovers how to be a better guy at the end and gets to leave Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, right? So what I liked about the ending of the movie is, for me, I think the movie was really pretty definitive about what happens to Dan and Jen at the end, but I do think we're very much left to wonder what it means for them. I think for me, there's no doubt that those two characters are now, they've been there a very long time. They're together. They're almost kind of primal at that point. I think the movie is really clear about what the mechanic is that has happened to them, but it leaves so much to the viewer to decide what that is all about. Is that a happy ending? Is it a sad ending?
Right. Well, yeah, I end on their physical and emotional state.
Yeah.
However you want to, and that's I conclude their story to that point. You know, all stories kind of are just ends where you decide that it's going to end. Yeah. Again, just focusing on the relationship, and I knew that really it wasn't the mechanics of it were just always secondary, which is what we talked about.
And I think for me, the mark of a really good film is when people can go and see the same thing and come out of it feeling different things. And so when I talked to people who saw your movie at Salem Horror Fest, some people said they thought the ending was really bleak and nihilistic.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Other people thought it was really romantic. And
see, I think
moving.
I think that's all okay. It's so great for me, because we premiered at Other Worlds in Austin. Someone came up to me with just the saddest eyes, and he had this look on his face, and he said, you know, I just want to tell you, your film really upset me. It really disturbed me. And I said, oh, you know, that's okay. That's a perfectly fine, you know, feeling that you can be having. And he felt kind of relieved that I was letting him have this kind of feeling, because other people were laughing at, you know. Yeah. And then in San Francisco, somebody screamed out, you know, this is my new favorite romantic comedy. And I think that it's open to interpret in that, like, how you feel about relationships. In a way, when I hear people talk about the movie, kind of presumptuous for me to say, but when I hear people talk about the movie, I think it also tells me a little bit about what they feel about relationships.
Oh, for sure it does.
You know?
Yeah.
Because you can have different, certainly different takes on it, and that's okay. I love it, actually.
Yeah, it's one of the things that ultimately I think really landed me where I did with the film. Is I was really enjoying the film, and then in those final moments when I was just wowed by the creative confidence to not tell me how to feel, but to show me something and let me decide. I thought it was just a really confident, self-assured way to end that story.
Yeah, thank you. That's really nice. Yeah. Again, I mean, you said you've watched The Pond. So The Pond definitely had that as well. And one thing that's interesting about the first film, because it is just one character, is that I get a lot of different interpretations of that film as well. So they will say, oh, is it about addiction? You know, going around in circles and deciding to kill yourself every day. And, you know, it's that whole thing that it is, you can kind of take different things from it. Absolutely.
That also kind of clued into this sort of what I was talking about, that catharsis. And I was wondering about the personal sort of story that went into the screenplay, because, you know, one of the first things they teach you whenever you're writing is write what you know.
Oh, sure.
So if there's domestic squabbles or a sense of discomfort in a relationship or whatever, it manifests. And in that one, you begin it with the crying baby and him needing to get out of it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And I just felt like, oh man, you know, and I think we all determine that we have children around the same age.
Yeah, we do. And
how we're in our respective microphone recording spaces right now. not with those children.
Yeah.
We're all in.
We're all hiding
all
from
in
our
the
kids
pond.
right now. That's
We're
what
all in the
we're doing.
pond right now. Right. So, but I was curious about with the pond, the original.
Mm-hmm.
There was more focus on the pond, like literally with the shots. And
Sure.
you had like these beautiful. It was really beautifully shot, and there was some nice drone sort of footage that was going out over the water and everything. Noticeably not in the feature length, Brightwood. And I was curious, were you focusing more on the characters and less on, again, I feel like
I think so. I didn't have anything to play with the first one when it was just me.
Sure.
So it's either you stay on my face, which you're on my face a lot, or you do the POV shots. And we filmed a lot of that. I mean, we filmed a ton for Brightwood. We really did have a lot. It just ended up being in the editing. It was
unnecessary.
When you're putting this together, I just didn't feel like it needed to be there.
Yeah. Speaking of your face, I think it's really you act terrific in that short film, and I thought you did a great job.
Yeah.
Obviously, wearing so many hats, it was no way you could both shoot it and be in front of the camera.
Made that.
And Max did a great job as Dan for sure. That's great.
While we're talking about Dane Elcar, actor in front of the camera, you alluded to it at the beginning. I feel like I need to give a real pat on the back to myself for restraining myself through this.
No.
You mentioned your dad. Your dad. And at Salem Horror, I kind of confessed to you that I was, I got interested in the movie and I looked it up. And then when I looked you up and I saw the name Dane Elcar, instantly I went, well, that must be what Dana Elcar.
Yeah.
90s kid, a huge MacGyver fan.
Oh yeah.
I hit the IMDb real quick and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Don't be uncool about this, right?
No, I love talking about my dad.
That's great.
So it's
that's
fun,
what I want to know, because I'm a kid who grew up loving MacGyver, loving Pete Thornton. I think in a really neat way, it was super progressive.
It's such a progressive show. When you look at it now, it's incredible.
Yeah, and to have written the changes going on with your dad into the plot of the film, rather than just writing him out, which would have been the lazy and cheap thing to do. I guess, having a dad, like you said, that was in the industry, what's that good MacGyver story, right? And can I have Richard Dean Anderson's number, right?
Very nice guy. I've not talked to him for many, I saw him years and years ago, but I was very young, I was a kid when that was going on, and it was just so amazing to be able to see, and it was also very separate from our lives. So when someone's a working actor, particularly, I think the first 2 seasons were shot in LA, but I think the rest of the show was shot in Vancouver. So we were in California. And so it was kind of that thing. My dad was going to work. I was sad that he was leaving. He was gone for months on end. But what was kind of incredible about it is I don't remember what day it would play, but I was watching the show along with everybody else. That's amazing. So you're just kind of sitting there like, what's going to happen next? And to me now, as an adult, it's just so he passed away when I was 21 back in 2005. So to me now, it's almost just like chicken soup. If I want to watch a show, it's just so nice to be able to see him or to watch some of his other films. But he was an actor through and through, and he was an old school theater actor that, from a very early age, I was reading plays to him, reading Shakespeare to him. I should mention he ended up losing his sight when I was around 7 years old due to glaucoma,
right?
Which is what Mike was referring to about having that written into the show, which was a huge deal for back then.
Yeah,
he could keep working, but amidst that kind of transition, which is so hard, I think that his love of theater and his love of the arts and his love of literature were really what fed him and kept him going. And obviously very influential to me, and here I am trying to make movies and
sure.
Trying to.
It must have been really fun to go to school every week and be like, hey, you know who that is? I'm MacGyver, right?
Yeah. I don't even remember. It's so funny. What I remember is like we would go to like the pool, and then people would come up and ask him for autographs, and I'd be like, oh, that's weird. But my dad was actually really into the community, so everybody kind of knew who he was where I grew up.
That's nice.
So
it's great to hear you talk about that, because Jason and I talk a lot, and I mean, obviously vastly different, right? Jason and I talk a lot about this podcast that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that we have decided, the reason why we ultimately decided that we do the show is if nobody ever listens to it, if it goes nowhere, when we are done with it, we're going to have recorded hours and hours of our voices and our thoughts and our opinions.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That we will get to leave behind. I was just talking about this with my daughter tonight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That we get to kind of leave this little thing behind that they will be able to, if they want to, revisit. And then, maybe down the line, Jason's great-great-grandkids can remember that time Granddad had to watch Cats because his buddy Mike told him to, right?
Oh, you bastard.
Those kind of things. And so I mean, what an incredible gift to be able, like you said, Chicken Soup, to go back and watch not only so much of your dad, but so much of your dad in something that's, beloved by so many people. That's a real magical thing, I think.
I love it. And I love watching all of his films. He worked a lot. So
he's in one of my favorite movies.
Oh, which one?
I absolutely love him in 2010.
Oh, yeah. 2010's great. We just watched it on film.
Fan.
So I went to Other Worlds.
Yeah, in Austin. Yeah,
in Austin. And here I am flipping through the program when they release it online. I'm scrolling through it. And then and in that program, there's a 35 millimeter screening of 2010. And I was like, this is, at first I was like, oh my God, this is great. And then I was like, what? Did they not know? Does nobody know that my dad's in this? So I emailed them, and they did. It was totally random.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
They didn't know.
That's so wild.
So here I was going to premiere my movie, and in the same festival, I get to go watch my dad on the big screen.
Did you watch? So you went to see 2010?
Oh, hell yeah!
How did it look?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it was great. It was an older print, so.
Oh, so it's a little muddy.
It was a little muddy.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, it was great to see it that way. And it's a great movie that his name, Peter
Hyams.
Peter Hyams.
Yeah.
I mean, to think that he took on all that responsibility. He shot it himself too. I think he wrote it.
He did. It's such I feel a kinship to him. Yeah. In so many ways, and you must in some ways too. I mean, but like the scope
imagine
and
taking
the size.
that on though. Imagine going, I'm just going to take.
Kubrick had the models destroyed. He had to rebuild and everything. It's a fantastically well done movie. Your father is in a scene that is arguably one of the best opening scenes of any movie.
I know.
Jason has been talking to me about this scene for ages. Like every once in a while, randomly, Jason will be like, you know what I love? And then he'll talk about this scene with your dad.
You don't, I mean, as someone who writes quite often, it's like I'm going to open this movie on like a 5-10 minute discussion of that they're going to have. I forget how long it actually is.
Yeah.
But it's you don't do that. You don't say I'm going to open my film on two people talking for that long of time. But the way it's written and how they're talking
and the stage,
and the structure of it, it's great.
And your dad's Russian accent was it's just fucking phenomenal. I
think I've seen them all now, but he worked so much during the 70s and 80s that I would turn on the television randomly and be like, it's the Incredible Hulk, as it used to play reruns, and then it'd be like, oh my God, my dad's the sheriff in that or in that show. It would happen all the time. Yeah.
Any plans for you to get back out in front of the camera?
I've been working with Max again. He's going to be predominantly a producer on this. He's not going to be in it, but we have another movie that, obviously things are on hold because of the WGA strike, but we have another movie that he's going working with and seeing if he can get some financing for, and it's all happening wonderfully.
That's good. Yeah. So you're planning on acting in that one?
No, just directing it.
Oh, I thought Mike was asking if you were getting in front of the camera.
I'm sorry. No, in front of the camera again. Yeah. Oh, I don't know about that.
You're good. You're really good.
I mean, acting is so fun, and I grew up around actors, and but I do think that once you get that kind of writer bug, and once you get behind a camera, there is something there that you get addicted to it. So. Yeah.
Yeah. You have an upcoming screening on the 25th of May, you said?
Yes, we are part of the Big Apple Film Festival. We'll be closing out the fest on Thursday, May 25th at 8:55 p.m. And go get your tickets online at their website if you can, because I don't think they're going to be available at the box office.
Dane, I want to congratulate you on the success of Brightwood, of course. I would love for you to tell our listeners where they can follow your work, follow you on the social media, all that kind of stuff, how can our listeners that want to continue to follow Dane Elcar's work like I will, where can they find you?
You can find me just by Dane Elcar on Instagram and Twitter and all of that. I don't use it very often, but we are promoting the film a lot now. Brightwood.movie or Brightwood Movie is on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. But we're definitely out there if you look up Brightwood or look up Dane Elcar and promoting the film. So, and I should add, we do have distribution, so we'll be released at the end of August through Cinephobia Releasing, and we're really happy with that. So.
That's great. So are they going to release it to streamers, or are you getting physical media?
Streamers and physical media.
That's great. That's terrific. That's great news.
That I'm really excited about, because getting to see the movie in a film festival is one thing, but being able to spread it far and wide to friends and all of those other people who haven't had a chance so they can put their eyeballs on your movie is great, because I'm going to be talking about Brightwood for a good long time, I think.
No, thank you.
Well, Dana, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled
it's been
for
fantastic.
This movie to make it in front of a larger audience. I'm excited about the distribution. I hope that our listeners will continue to follow your work. I hope that you absolutely sell out the Big Apple Film Fest. Good luck.
No,
there.
Thank you. Yeah.
And we just really want to thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, this was so great. I had a really good. Please, I'm going to start listening to your podcast. I'm so happy that I
thank you.
discovered the both of you. Thank you so much for introducing yourself and reaching out to me.
Yeah.
And keep in touch. We can get back on and talk bad movies.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Mislim na te, hoću znati vježbat ću sate i sate. Karate, vježbat ću dok zadnji mi kjaj zostane izađe.
What is the worst movie you've ever seen? What is the movie like, if you had that person out there that you're like, I'm going to make you watch the worst thing I can think of, what would that be?
Oh, something that I really, really didn't like.
He's too agreeable.
Yeah.
He's like,
I'm having a hard time thinking of something.
Everything has merit.
Dane Elcar is too nice for Filmjitsu.